Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Chase Allen? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. In early 2023, 25-year-old Chase Allen lived with his parents in Farmington, Utah. This is about 20 minutes north of Salt Lake City. Reportedly, Chase had graduated from both high school and college. His family said that Chase had studied the law. He was a patriot doing what he could to defend the people's freedom and liberty in his community. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On March 1, 2023, Chase Allen was driving a blue BMW 3 Series in Farmington. A police officer started following Chase. The officer initiated a traffic stop. Chase pulled into a post office parking lot. This was at about 3:22 p.m. The officer was concerned because Chase's vehicle was displaying a fake license plate. The plate appeared to contain symbols associated with the sovereign citizen movement, which I'll talk more about in the analysis. The officer exited his cruiser, approached the driver's side of the BMW, and knocked on the window. Chase rolled down the driver's side window a few inches. His eyes were visible to the officer, but not much else. The windows of the vehicle were tinted. The officer informed Chase that he was being stopped because he didn't have a registration on his vehicle. Chase replied to the officer, "I don't need registration. I don't answer questions." At this point, the officer used his radio to request backup. During the conversation that followed, the officer informed Chase that he was requesting his identification and that he was being detained. He was not free to leave. Chase indicated he would not answer questions. The officer tried to reason with Chase, offering to have a conversation with him. Chase provided a few legal arguments he claimed supported his refusal to provide identification. The officer told Chase that he did not have an option. He was lawfully required to identify himself. Chase could either cooperate and they could discuss the situation, or Chase could fail to cooperate. The officer was content with either choice. It was up to Chase to choose which direction he wanted to go. Chase then recited more sovereign citizen jargon. The officer pressed him for an answer. Would he identify himself or not? At this point, Chase retrieved a passport. The officer responded, "Wonderful. Do you have a driver's license as well?" Chase told the officer he was not giving him jurisdiction. Among other things, Chase said, "Do not detain. You're not allowed to stop me." Chase finally handed the passport to the police officer through the opening in the window. The officer read his name as Chase Allen. Chase responded to this by saying, "That's not me. It's a piece of plastic paper." The officer kind of sarcastically accused Chase of having a fraudulent passport. Other officers were on the scene at this point. The officer said to Chase, "Step out of the car for me." Chase replied, "No." The officer ordered him again. Chase replied, "No, I'm not required to." As Chase was arguing back and forth with the officer, Chase said something like, "If you try and force me, then we're going to have an issue." The officer repeatedly told Chase to step out of the vehicle. Another officer said that if Chase did not, they would break the window and pull him out. At this point, Chase moved his cell phone from his right hand to his left hand. As the officer opened the door, another officer moved closer to Chase like he was getting ready to grab him. Chase appears to move his right hand down near a brown holster on his right hip. The officer who was moving closer lunged into the vehicle. At this point, an officer repeatedly yelled the word "gun." The officer who had lunged in ran out of the way as officers opened fire on Chase. All 5 officers on the scene ended up shooting at Chase in his vehicle. After one officer yelled, "Cease fire, cease fire," another officer fired one more round. Then the shooting stopped. About 12 shots were fired altogether. The police officers pulled Chase out of the vehicle. An empty holster was visible on his right hip, and a gun was visible on the floorboard in front of the driver's seat. Chase was mortally wounded and would later die at a hospital. In the aftermath of the shooting, The officer who had lunged into the vehicle can be heard saying that Chase was able to get his gun out. At the time making this video, the police continue to investigate the shooting. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Was the shooting of Chase Allen justified? The investigation is not complete. The only evidence available right now is from the 5 body cameras and the 1 dash camera. From the videos, it's clear that Chase was resisting lawful commands given by the officer. The officers at the scene had a few reasons to be concerned for their safety. Chase made what appeared to be a threat when he suggested the police would have an issue if they forced him out of his vehicle. Chase moved his phone from his right hand to his left hand, and Chase appeared to reach for a holster on his right hip. Some have argued that Chase could have been reaching for his belt buckle instead of his holster, but I don't think this actually matters as far as the officer's threat assessment. They would not have known whether he was reaching for the gun or the belt buckle. Chase was non-compliant, made a threat, and then made a threatening motion. I think the shooting was justified under the circumstances, but I do think that the police contributed to the unfortunate outcome in one way. After opening the door, the police should have continued to order Chase out of the vehicle instead of lunging in. They didn't really give him a chance after pulling that door open. When the officer leaned over him and grabbed him, Chase's seatbelt was buckled. One natural reaction on Chase's part might have been to reach down toward his right hip in order to unfasten the seatbelt. Furthermore, what was the officer's plan here? Simply to grab Chase and hold on to him? Was the officer going to unbuckle the seatbelt for Chase? I don't think the officer contemplated his strategy enough before acting. Despite this, as I mentioned, I think overall the shooting was justified. There is the sense that Chase knew that this traffic stop would end in disaster because he was acting on his sovereign citizen beliefs. This brings me to item number 2. What is the sovereign citizen movement? This belief system is an anti-government ideology that started in the United States and spread to several other countries. The main idea behind the ideology is that a person cannot automatically be governed. They have to provide consent for that to happen. To a sovereign citizen, there is no legitimate government. They are on their own. They can do anything they want. No one has authority over them. They express their freedom in a few ways. For example, they engage in fraud. They don't pay taxes. They do not register their vehicles, purchase automobile insurance, or obtain any type of license. Not a driver's license, not a marriage license, and not even a fishing license. Oddly, they have a particular disdain for zip codes. Sovereign citizens do not like the police and frequently break the law. From a mental health and personality standpoint, some sovereign citizens suffer from delusions, and many have extreme personality traits. Cluster A personality pathology is common, like paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality features. They tend to have odd beliefs, magical thinking, elevated gullibility, and very concrete thought patterns. For example, they do not understand sarcasm, wit, or really any type of humor, and they don't appreciate the arts. Narcissistic behavior is overrepresented as well. One could argue that they have the ultimate sense of entitlement. Each one of them is a nation unto themselves. That thinking certainly puts a new perspective on travel. I guess for them, touching their toes would be like a cross-country journey. One of the more unusual elements of the sovereign citizen ideology is how they use their own terminology for legal arguments. They believe that using certain words or phrases will allow them to escape responsibility for criminal behavior. Here are a few examples of common terms used by so-called sovereign citizens. Affidavit of truth, traveling in a private capacity, accepted for value, right to travel, conveyance, they use this instead of vehicle, domicile, this is used instead of home or residence, de facto government, referring to the government as a corporation, chargeback notice, under threat, duress, or coercion, they often sign this after their name on official documents, kingdom of heaven, republic, who is the victim, where is your oath of office, and freeman. They also try to escape liability by only using lowercase letters. Given their level of paranoia, it's not surprising that sovereign citizens tend to believe in conspiracy theories. For example, anti-vaccination, flat Earth, faked moon landing, and of course, alien lizard humanoids. Moving to item number 3, Chase's mother, Diane Allen, has engaged in behavior which is consistent with the sovereign citizen ideology. In April 2022, Diane was pulled over by the police. She did not have a license, and her registration was expired. She was charged accordingly. During her court proceedings, including a lawsuit that she filed against the Farmington police, she produced a number of documents containing language consistent with sovereign citizen beliefs. Here are a few examples. Diane claimed to be a sovereign person of Utah who had an inherent right to access public roads without her liberty restrained. Diane wrote that she revoked her citizenship, quote, if it ever existed, with the legal fiction known as the United States Government Corporation, USA, Inc., and any and all subsidiary corporations, both known and unknown, under its control, unquote. Diane claimed that she was born in the sovereign Republic Utah State. She's not a citizen of the United States Government Corporation. Her relationship to that federal entity is that of a non-resident alien, also known as American State National or Lawful Bloodline American. Diane's filings did not impress the court. She was found guilty in absentia and fined $100. She did not appear to be too happy about this. She wrote a letter to the court ordering them to cease and desist, although she misspelled the word desist. I guess she renounced her spelling citizenship as well. The court sent her a collections letter. She wrote the words, refused for cause, in red ink across it, and threatened to report the court for postal fraud. It is reasonable to believe that Diane's bizarre belief system had some effect on her son, Chase Allen. This brings me to item number 4. Chase appeared to have embraced the sovereign citizen ideology. On September 21, 2022, Chase appeared at a Davis County Justice Court hearing for a woman who had been charged with a traffic violation. It's not clear what his connection was to this woman, if any. During the hearing, Chase's behavior was out of control. He was described as disruptive and non-compliant. He started to resist officers and refused to leave the court. The police used what they described as reasonable force to arrest Chase and take him to jail. After they searched him, they found that he had a small plastic slide credit card device which contained several lock-picking items. The police noticed that Chase matched the description of a man with warrants out for his arrest. They asked him to identify himself, but he refused. He said the police had no authority over him. He was released on his own recognizance after agreeing not to commit any more crimes and to appear at future court proceedings. During the fatal traffic stop that occurred over 5 months later, there was other evidence that made Chase look like a sovereign citizen. His fake license plate contained the words Utah, American State Citizen, and Notice, Private Automobile Not for Hire. When Chase was talking to the officer, he used words like jurisdiction, signed contract, and corporate. Chase was holding his phone up as if to record the encounter with the officer. I find this curious because sovereign citizens don't believe in the government. So who was Chase going to show the video to? There is no way to know if Chase was delusional, paranoid, or had any other mental health symptoms, but it's clear that the police should have approached this traffic stop as a mental health crisis. Now moving to my final thoughts. One of the difficulties with the sovereign citizen ideology is that the group is very difficult to communicate with. They live in a world of antagonism and stress, and they don't really like anybody. Even a zip code hating alien lizard humanoid traveling in a private capacity from the kingdom of heaven to the flat earth with the intent of handing a chargeback notice to the government corporation would probably not be accepted for value in the domicile of sovereign citizen believers. Those are my thoughts in the case of Chase Allen. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.